Welcome to Alliance's Inspired Design. I'm your host, Rochelle Marish. In this thought leadership series, we will be discussing how innovation is inspired by organizations' culture, brand, and strategy. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Sangam Napit, who uses human-centered design to create elevated customer experiences. So what does that mean? Sangam dives into why it's important to include the customer as part of the design process to build, experiment, and deploy holistic experiences. At US Bank, he reimagines business banking to push the boundaries of what is possible. In his spare time, he leads design of new customer-centric products and services to small business owners through user experience research and is a self-published author of the Experience Manifesto. Wow, impressive. Today, we are going to hear more about how focusing on the end user product or service can drive innovation and build a thriving business. So to kick us off, Sangam, can you share why it is important and how you discover what is on your customers' minds?
First of all, thank you so much for having me this morning. I'm glad to be here. It's very important to really understand what's on your customers' minds because you can figure out what their expectations are from whatever experience it is that you are trying to deliver. I think it's very important to understand what mental models are like and what mental models people have to ensure that you really understand what their expectations are so you can at least meet them. And of course, and then try to exceed them. People are designed to be delightfully surprised, right? We have tons of research that shows that.
So how do you dig deep into your customers' pain points?
Before you go into pain points, I think the one really important thing is to understand what your customers' goals are. And the way I normally do this is just either one-on-one interviews or participatory design sessions, which are very similar to focus groups, but a little more in-depth. Essentially, they're designed to understand, okay, what is your customer trying to do? Everyone has a specific goal. How do we get that customer to the end goal? Really understanding what those are and then figuring out what the journey is going to be, right? So understanding what people are doing, what they're thinking throughout the process, how are they feeling, and really understanding, okay, in this experience, where do the pain points lie? And then really trying to figure out how can you, as a service provider or somebody that's developing a product, whether that's online or offline, can really serve to eliminate those pain points, or at least at minimum reduce them. But really mapping that end-to-end journey, I think, is very key in understanding where the pain points are.
Have you done these sorts of in-depth interviews with customers from a dispersed aspect, like separate and in different locations, or have you done it only in person? And if you've done it dispersely, what tools have you used to be able to create that communication?
Sure, both. Post-pandemic, it's more prevalent now, but before that, it was both, right? I would say it was maybe 50-50 because we have customers across the nation, right? And I've worked with different businesses as well. So if you get the chance to do it in person, that's great because you get to have that personal connection and to dig deep. And you might start with a specific question, but then try to understand what the root cause is if you do identify a pain point. But that doesn't mean you can't do it virtually, right? We use WebEx, is very popular. There's an online tool called User Zoom where you can do what we call moderated, unmoderated usability tests where customers actually go through an experience and give us feedback. And we can watch them do it or have it just recorded and go back to that video to really see their responses and get their feedback.
And I know you've mentioned interviews on how you gather information. Is there other ways that you gather information as you learn more about your customer?
Yeah, there's multiple ways. So I'll speak to digital products specifically. So it depends on where you are in the software development lifecycle. We love to do interviews and participatory design in what we call the discovery phase. This is before a single pixel is colored and a single line of code is written. We really try to understand, okay, what are the attitudes, behaviors, and motivations driving specific ways that people are wanting to interact with the product, really, because that's informing the design. We like to do usability tests. Again, like I mentioned, moderated and unmoderated usability tests to get feedback on, okay, we heard you say X, and this is what we designed. Did we get it right? And these tests can be done remotely or in person, and where we show the product and give the customer a scenario, right, a real life scenario, and say, hey, this is your goal. walk us through how you might achieve it, and really pay attention to, okay, where are the mistakes occurring? Of information is the customer not understanding? Are they able to progress forward? What's preventing them from doing that? And really using that feedback to improve those designs, multiple iterations before we actually even launch it out to market.
As you talk about the design process, like what information is really pivotal that gives you that aha or changes where and how you're going to progress forward?
For me, in the discovery phase, I think, there's different ways to describe it, but the moments that matter, that's a phrase that gets used quite a bit, especially if you do a journey map, an end-to-end journey map of the current state, which is basically what you're trying to do is understand what is the current experience today with either the product that you have, a version of it, or if you're trying to create something new, then a similar product, right? Maybe it's your competitor, maybe it's just a third party that provides something very similar to the solution that you're trying to create. You really want to figure out exactly what I just said, which is the moments that matter, meaning what's pivotal in terms of getting the right information or ensuring that the right amount of information is presented. So the last thing you want to do is leave your customers not knowing what's going to happen next, or ending a session which is going to continue later on with maybe an email notification, but the customer doesn't know that that's going to happen. Whenever there's uncertainty, we want to try to avoid that as much as possible. So you're really trying to identify which moment matters in terms of getting to the next step, right? We're trying to progress a customer through that journey and really identifying what those pieces are and making sure we include those.
So that kind of leads into my next question, because I checked out your website, of course, and read about how you take these insights and to build an experiment to drive innovation. And I thought it would be great to hear a little bit more about your process, about how you experiment, learn, and iterate to deliver thriving businesses. And I'm curious at how you've done this with dispersed teams.
If you're not taking a human-centered approach, you're really focused on your product. If you are a founder of a startup company, you're really excited by whatever it is you've created, right? You've taken your idea and you want to put it out there in the world. The challenge that a lot of folks run into, you build something incredible, but nobody comes. Why is that? And I think it quite often points back to how involved your customers or your potential customers were in the process of building that. I think one of the key components of human-centered design is ensuring that your end user, and we've been calling it our customer, is part of the design process. Because if you create a product that's really centered around the customer's goals, as we mentioned, customers' needs and their pain points, right? Really centering the design and development around those human attributes, I think you can create something that's extremely powerful and that people want to use because you've tested it. So ensuring that feedback loop between the product development, what creating, and the customer insight is extremely key. And the innovative piece comes when you ideate on solutions. Like, let's say your customer says they have a specific problem, right? You did some interviews. Let's say you did a participatory design session, a workshop where you said deliver X experience, and you identify a list of, let's say, 10 pain points that you would love to help eliminate or minimize for them. Once you have that, it's very important to say, okay, so we have these list of pain points. What is it that we're going to do to eliminate? So you sit down and have a brainstorming session. And essentially, when you have this brainstorming session, hopefully you're not doing it by yourself and you're doing it with your teams. And it doesn't matter if you're together or apart. When you're doing this virtually, it's a little more difficult. It's challenging, right? Collaboration across the digital space is not easy, although there are great tools. For example, we use Mural. Mural is an excellent tool to do collaboration across. Something as simple as PowerPoint, if you don't have to be working on the same document at the same time, works too, right? Essentially, you want to have a brainstorming session, a blue ocean strategy, and ask questions like, what if? What if we could do this? What if we could, buy a home through Amazon? Whatever crazy idea that you can think of. Use those pain points to ground yourself as a team. And then, go through a blue ocean strategy where you're thinking about the best case scenario or the ideal state. You had no restrictions. What would the solution look like? And then use that as your guiding light.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on the blue ocean? I know you've described it just a little bit, but I'd love to hear a little bit more.
And this is not my idea, right? There's a great book out there called Blue Ocean Strategy. But the way I like to look at it is really looking at a problem and ideating without any restrictions, right? Whatever industry you're in, there's always policy, there's procedure, there's internal restrictions that you put on yourself, that you say that you're going to operate this way. There's guardrails, right? And essentially what I mean when I say blue ocean strategy, I know that normally it's like look at your competitors and create something that no one else is creating, right? But how I like to look at it is say, okay, let's take off all those restrictions. Like let's eliminate all of our guardrails that we put up by ourselves, right? Or whether it's industry related or internal. And say, in an ideal world, what could the solution look like, right? So you're thinking at a high level. You're thinking that there's anything is possible. Really, it's really a possibility mindset. That's where the innovation happens. Is when you work without those restrictions.
As you've worked with dispersed teams in this like big ideation sessions, I'm thinking of your blue ocean. How have you developed the rapport within your teams to create that trust?
If it's the first time you're interacting with the people, that's always challenging. So it's always good to have some sort of level setting exercise or grounding exercise. And it could be at a personal level. Tell us something about yourself that nobody knows in this group, right? Something like that, as simple as that, really lets the guards down, right? And it really kind of opens you up as a person and allows you to connect. Right. So when you don't have that personal connection, I think you have to structure your exercises, your workshops that allow people to kind of bring them outside of their shells, if you will, right? So those, you just have to use the right sort of tools to do that and ask the right questions and get people involved and engaged.
Well, I want to say that I really have enjoyed our conversation today. Do you have anything else that you would like to share with people on how to push the boundaries and to really get people to go further than they've gone before when they are starting to look at problems in a different way?
Sure. And I think the key is ensuring that the human element is center of whatever it is you're working on. Humans are unpredictable, right? Unpredictably irrational for that matter. So it's really hard to keep a pulse on people. But I think it's really important, especially if it's a person that's going to use your end result. I think it's very important to keep them at the center of your, either whether that's business decisions or design decisions, because I think that really can help guide you to the solution as close as the right solution as possible.
Well, this is fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today, Sangam. I really appreciate your insights and thoughts on all of this. I was inspired and learned a lot. So thank you very much. And thank you all to our listeners who are listening to the Inspired Design series. We are looking forward to the next series coming out and appreciate your time today.